Hello everyone, this is Erik, the Asian movie enthusiast, and this is my review of Whispering Corridors, a Korean horror film from 1998. That year, 1998, is a memorable one for fans of Asian horror because that's the same year that Ring came out in Japan. In terms of international impact, Whispering Corridors was not quite as influential as Ring, but it was the first truly memorable South Korean horror film that was available to Western audiences. And if you watch my Asian horror playlist, you will have noticed that South Korea only produced a small handful of horror films prior to 1998 that were available to international audiences. Now that would change, of course, in subsequent years, but I think this film has earned a place in cinematic history. And to be honest, I think it's more interesting than Ring. Not as scary, but more interesting. In an exclusive all-girls school, a former pupil returns to start a new job as a teacher and strikes up a friendship with two very different students. But when a teacher is found dead, apparently having committed suicide, circumstances that link the past and the present begin to unveil themselves. As the body count rises, the memory of a past death calls forth a ghost that haunts the corridors of this troubled school. Now, thematically, Whispering Corridors hits pretty hard. This film makes statements on the topics of friend abandonment and the controversial subject of teacher abuse in South Korea. For example, some of the students get felt up or smacked around by a male teacher named Mad Dog, who also declares that his students will no longer have a personal life because every second of their time will be spent studying in order to get into a good college. Even more scathing, perhaps, is the ending, which basically infers that teachers will scream and beat and abuse with reckless abandon, but when all is said and done, they really don't care. So that's kind of the between the lines. I was reading between the lines in that ending. That's what I was getting. So this film is an absolute hit piece on the Korean education system, as well as the cutthroat competition that exists between the students themselves. Whispering Corridors franchise of films is heavily reliant on both its themes and its characters. Now, these are not like schlocky jump scare fests or popcorn horror films. They take their time to develop relationships between the schoolgirls, and it's those relationships that are the foundation for everything else in the film, including the horror. For all of the horror movies out there that use young women or high school girls as main characters, and there are a lot of them, very few have really showcased and developed the actual concept of schoolgirl friendship as well as these Whispering Corridors films. These movies have a very almost romanticized, sentimental tone to them that adds a lot of dramatic weight, and it's one of the defining characteristics of this film franchise. One aspect that may throw some viewers off is that the story is occasionally shown in a fragmented structure that does require some thought to piece things together. You may need to pay attention while watching this. I really enjoy that aspect, but it did take me a second viewing to catch everything. And during a recent viewing, because I haven't seen this film in a while, I actually had to rewind a few scenes and be like, wait, what was that? And I'm, okay, I remember now. So it gets your brain working, so it's good. In terms of horror, there is a lot of atmosphere in this film. The nighttime lighting uses moody shades of blue, and the autumn season is also captured. It does have a slightly dreamy feel to it as well, especially in terms of the use of the soft camera work, jingling bells and chimes, some slow motion, and some freeze frames. The ghost design is more classical and humanized, so it's not like your typical Onryo ghost that's used in Japanese horror films. One criticism that I've seen online over the years is that some people think that Whispering Corridors is not horrific enough. Now, during the many times that I've seen this movie, that idea never really crossed my mind. I guess one could say that Whispering Corridors has a more classical feel for a horror film, in the sense that it's more thematic and atmospheric, less visceral and terrifying. I'm perfectly fine with that. But then again, I do have a fairly liberal idea of horror when compared to other modern moviegoers. Some viewers like their horror films with a lot of bite to them, which is perfectly fine. However, a lot of people nowadays are so used to the visceral scares that if those are absent from a movie, they conclude that it must not really be a horror movie or not be scary enough. And I disagree with that assessment. I would cite the old Universal monster movies as examples, right? And even some of the less violent Hammer films from the middle of the century. In any case, there are some pretty good death scenes in Whispering Corridors, this first film, which makes that aforementioned criticism even more odd. It's also rather creepy overall. The director is Ki-Hung Park, who also directed Secret Tears from 2000, Acacia from 2003, and Gangster High from 2006, all of which are pretty impressive films, actually. Then he took a long break from directing, recently returned with The Unalterable from 2019, which I have not seen. The acting in this movie is good overall as well. So overall, Whispering Corridors is a very good example of just a high-quality horror film. It spawned 4 sequels, and I will be reviewing all of them this month, 1 per week. These movies are most readily available on physical media. I showcased the Tartan Asia Extreme box set that had the first 3 films in my last pickups video, and they're also available separately. It's called the Ghost School Trilogy if you're looking for that box set. So check them out, especially the first one. Start with the first one if you want. And again, you can watch them in any order. They're not a progressive one storyline series. You can watch them in any order. Have fun with it. And as always, I'll see you next time.